Hi, it's good to see you. I'm Addie from Whimsy of Things. I am starting a new series called Ink Shots, where I do a quick one ink review. And this one is about an ink that was released from my local pen shop, and I'm excited to share it with you guys. Today's ink shot is going to be about a new ink that just came out from Papier Plume. This ink is called Wigs and Boas, and it's available on their site right now. I believe a bottle is $10, so it's a pretty good price for ink, and it's 30 milliliters. And they do this kind of fun fake wax seal on the top. Wigs and Boas, that's what we're going to look at today. And I have it in 3 pens. I have it inked in a flex pen. It's a Fountain Pen Revolution Jaipur version 1. It's a flex pen with a 5.5 nib on it, so it's a finer flex pen. I also have it inked for my finer option in this Hungdian Black Forest. It has the medium point on it. And then for my broader option, I have this PenBBS 495 with a Calligraphy number 2 nib on it, which acts like an architect. That is a flex, a finer option, and a more broad option that we'll be writing with later. But to start out with, I would like to just do a swatch, and I will do that on these little papers that I do for my binder. So let's start out with a splotch test, and we'll just do this on the side here. All right, so that's our first impression of the ink. It seems to be a very pretty pink. I do like the tones in there. Not very cool toned, not really warm toned either. It's sort of a medium fuchsia. Move this around a little bit. Yeah, it's pretty. We'll have to see how that dries. Wigs and Boas, that's a Mardi Gras reference because there are a lot of both during Mardi Gras parades. Well, I mean, not just Mardi Gras parades. It's very celebratory town. And lots of wigs and boas. It's a neat name. I like their New Orleans themed inks. I think because they are local, they are accurate, and they've done a good job of like capturing some things about New Orleans that more local people would know, and above and beyond like the touristy type stuff. And while it dries, we are going to do a test of these different pens on the Aerofol. Aerofol paper is extremely sensitive to hand oils, so I'm going to put my little nerdy glove on here, and we'll put this here. But it is very good at showing ink properties, so that is why I would like to use that. I'd like to do this for any bottles that I have, like a sheet or kind of document how the ink acts in different kinds of pens. So let's start with the finer point pen, and this is the Hungdian Black Forest. It's writing smoothly. It's working nice. I don't have any kind of problems with this pen. It is a good writer. It's not the smooth like glass experience, but it's definitely doesn't give me hard starts or any sort of problems with writing. So it's good to see that it is working just fine in there. Doesn't seem dry. Doesn't really seem wet either. All right. So let's do the broader option. This is the PenBBS 495 with a Calligraphy number 2 nib. You definitely see there how this, you start seeing some shading involved that you're not seeing in the medium point at all. I mean, maybe slightly, but much more pronounced here, right? We'll take a look when it dries too. Sometimes shading shows up when the ink is wet and it kind of melds together when it dries. All right, and then lastly, this is the Fountain Pen Revolution. It's the dry pour version 1 with the 5.5 Ultra Flex nib on it. So the 5.5 does not have as much of a flex as the number 6 nib. And I think maybe going forward, when I'm testing ink, I will try to use one of the number 6 nibs I have, because this is less line variation. So those are, for me, the main types of pens that I use, primarily the last two. Usually a broader nib, architect or broad, or a stub, and a flex pen. Though I have been writing with some finer points more lately. I think going forward, when I do these sheets, I like having this information. I think I want a wider flex, a number 6, and I think maybe a finer fine. One of the actual fine nibs I have, or extra fine, I have a few. The last test of the ink that I want to do is a wash, because I do like using this ink for art. But I understand that that is not something that most people are looking at fountain pen ink for. So feel free to skip to the next section if you're not interested in this at all. I like seeing how inks wash out because I get a better feeling of the undertones of the ink. We'll put down a pretty good amount of water, and we will drop a pretty good amount of ink on the top. All right, I'm gonna let that dry. And I'll come back and we'll look at all of them together and see what we think. Okay, we're dry. So this is the Papier Plume Wigs and Boas. This is the original swatch that I did. It is on the Kikuyo business paper. This is the primary paper I use for my planner, so I always do a swatch on this. You can see that even in the medium point, there is some shading, but not as much as the wider, which is normal. It is not super saturated. You can see where there's definitely a lighter and a darker area in the swatch. And it is a pink that is leaning more towards, it's a slightly cooler pink, but it's still got some red tones in it. So it is almost right in the middle, which is nice because I don't think I have a color that's really like this. And then if we're moving on to the writing samples, this is what I'm talking about when I say I like to see how the ink is in different pens, because as you can see, even though this is the same color, it acts quite different in the 3 different pens. So it is fairly saturated in the medium point pen with some shading. It's a little less saturated and lighter in the wider pen, and there is more shading. And then in the flex nib, it is quite saturated. And I'm guessing that's because the flex pen puts down so much ink, and shading in general will show up in some flex pens, but it really is ink dependent. And it does not show up as much in this ink, to the point where these 2 pens almost look like 2 different colors. And that's just the nature of the nib. In the flex pen, there is a very small amount in some of the letters of that sort of haloing effect where it's darker along the outside of the letters than it is on the inside. And if I had to pick my favorite out of these 3, I would have to go with the PenBBS, the Calligraphy #2 Architect Style Nib. I like the tone that it gives there. It's definitely more on the pink side than it is in the Flex pen, and there's more shading. So this would be my favorite right here, but I do like it in all three. And then if we were to look at the actual washout card, it's a little hard to see on camera, I'm sure, but there is a bright pink. There is some purple that is pulling out in here. And then the darker areas are very pretty in there. So this one would be a fun one to do art with. It's got a lot of really pretty and interesting tonalities in there. So if we go ahead and archive this or put it into my binder, we'll compare it to some of the pinks that I have in there. And I don't have a ton of ink, but just based off of what I have, I'll show you. It sort of reminded me of, let me pull this pink sheet out and be easier to deal with. It sort of reminded me of the Van Diemen's Purr in that it was a little bit darker, but as you can see here on this sheet, the Van Diemen's Purr is much more reddish. Though I'm sure they look somewhat similar on camera. Then it's kind of got the same tonality as this Fairy Tale Pink by Inkybara, but it's much darker. It's more purplish than the Bumbling Blossom by Ferris Wheel Press, and these are getting, quite orange, and it's definitely not orange based, but if we look at the other side here, it's not terribly purple based either. That's more of a purple based pink, and so is that, and it is definitely warmer than that. So it really is sort of right in the middle, which makes it, to me, a nice pink to have because I don't have anything that's even really similar to it. And performance-wise, it acted very well in all three pens. I would say it's a little on the drier side. In the Flex pen, it did feel slightly dry. But I didn't notice that in either of the other two pens, so that could be a Flex pen specific issue. There we go. So that is, if we look at the bottle one more time, that is the Papier Plume Wigs and Boas. I'll put a link to this ink in the description in case you're interested. So that wraps up my first ink shot, the one ink review video. This one about Papier Plumes, Wigs and Boas. What did you guys think of this ink? Is this something that you would like to try? What do you guys think of the format? Do you like the format or do you like the longer videos? Always happy to hear opinions. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you all have a wonderful week and I'll see you again next time. Bye. Hi, it's Addie from Whimsy of Things. I am starting to go crazy. Hi.